one of the biggest challenges we face with the spoken word is focusing on what's most relevant and leaving out the huge volume of things that we could say because we know them, but actually don't really need to include. I'm Simon Bucknell, and as you may have guessed, judging by the background, I'm in Oxford again, having just run some sessions at Saïd Business School here at the university. And the Bodleian Library is well known for being not just the main library for the University of Oxford, but also for being a copyright library, which, as you may know, involves a copy of every single book that's ever been published being provided to this library. And I remember as a student here years ago, literally you could apply to have access to any book, ranging from the lightest fiction and comics through to the most serious academic monographs. So it's an extraordinary resource. You can get anything, more than 1 million books, I think. The question is, where are they stored? Because as you can probably imagine from the building behind me, there it is, you can see the lights of the reading rooms. There isn't space in that building, vast though the building is, to store all the books. They have to be stored somewhere, and they're stored in what's known as literally the stack, which until some years ago was literally a series of vaults underneath where I'm now standing and stretching right back across to the building behind me. It was a huge underground cellar, if you like, in which were stored hundreds of thousands of books. In fact, I can remember as a student seeing a manhole cover in the courtyard back there being opened up and books being winched out from underground. And so if you're applying for a book, somebody will go scurrying down into the depths, and then they'd source the book and bring it back up to the surface. Which, if you think about it, is a bit like the experience and the knowledge that we ourselves have. We have all this wealth of knowledge and experience and projects we've worked on and challenges we've overcome, things we know, books we've read, notes we've taken, all this stuff in our minds from our experience. And there just isn't time to be able to communicate all of that stuff when presenting to an audience. There just isn't time. And of course, the audience won't have the attention span. So, for example, just some months ago I was working with a group of PhD engineers. They've got enormous depth of expertise, but when they're presenting, pitching, delivering lectures to audiences, even highly educated audiences, there is never enough time to distill and communicate everything that they know. Spoken communication, by definition, is a shortcut. Whether you work in business, whether you work in a charity, in academia, you run your own business, whatever the situation, teacher perhaps, there is never time to distill everything. It's by definition a shortcut, and that can be painful. Here, I think some years ago they made the decision to move the books, at least most of them, off-site. So those books that weren't accessed very often, they've been moved off-site outside of Oxford because it's cheaper and more efficient to store them there, and therefore to access them only when needed. Only the most commonly used and needed volumes are actually stored on site. And again, that's relevant for us, is it not, to get really clear on what's most likely to be most relevant for the people we need to engage, and then to store away in the archive all that stuff which it would be lovely to include, but actually it's just not going to be relevant. So there's my thought and challenge for you, drawn from here, the heart of Oxford academia, the Bodleian Library. Find a way to prioritise what's most relevant and show that on the shelves, as it were, for the readers, which in your case will be your listeners. And everything else just needs to be stored away somewhere quiet. You never know when you might have access to it, but it's about prioritising what's most relevant. This is Simon Bucknell. If you're watching this anywhere other than on simonbucknell.com, then check out the website, because that's my digital home online. And in the meantime, wherever you are, whatever your role and responsibility, speak well and speak soon.